Will'd like to know, do people live on Mars in your time? And have we made any exciting discoveries about Mars?
You have absolutely no reason to live on Mars.
Okay.
There were many scientists in your, I would suppose, we have to keep changing our vocabulary here. I'm sitting with a great council of scientists, historians, and teachers, and we're attempting to compile information and share it through myself. But we continue to have to shift our vocabulary for what you are aware of in your current time. And that is because so much has changed. And there were many, NASA and various other groups, not just in the United States, but in various programs around your world at that time who explored Mars and who began to build various cities around them, just for research and discovery. And there's a base there already that is shared between Russia and the United States. There are so many things that are already there, but only astronauts would use that as a landing ground, so to speak, to be closer towards that base will be brought about as a landing ground to be closer towards a planet that scientists are currently working to see if it would be a better idea to go there after devastation. And in your future, many, shall we say, elitist groups in your governments were the only ones allowed to inhabit that planet, and then they destroyed it. Are you surprised? In such a short amount of time, they destroyed it. So what you have is not an escape route. Mars is just simply the same as the base that's being built now by your governments. It became just a base for travel to other planets if needed. But right now, we don't particularly need to travel to other planets. We have contact with various beings, and we are aware that we are those beings, that we are of their same DNA. And most of our genetic evolution has just been from learning from these beings that have the same DNA structures as we do. We've learned a lot. We've learned a lot about growing our plants in this way. We've learned a lot about how to operate in our family systems this way. We've learned a lot about, we don't use the word spiritual in the same way that you do, but we would say our energetic evolution, which would be the same as what you would call your spiritual evolution. We say energetic evolution. We've learned that from various species of beings in this universe that don't reside here, and they don't need to reside here. But because we've evolved to the fifth density in our experiencing, many beings can now communicate and visit with us as they wish. And we've learned so much. We don't need to live on Mars, to answer your question. We don't want to.
Thank you for answering that, Chelsea. That was a great answer. I have another question here. Who are considered as humans in your opinion? Do they exist outside of Earth?
Again, you're not going to like this answer. Humans were never real. You were originally, what is the word you're using? We believe you use the word starseed, the council says.
Yeah.
You're all that. So in your, as you would call it, spiritual evolution, as we call it energetic evolution, you began to recollect that you were and always have been and always will be, the truth of you is galactic. You were never human. Human was a made-up species, a bit of a cover-up and lower density for you just to awaken out of and to experience duality. But it was never a real species. That was always something. And when you recognized that you were the extraterrestrials on this planet, not the other way around, a lot of you in the future, in your future, you will become just much more evolved to the direction that you can accept that, like, holding on to a human race is not something you really want to do. Why do you want to do that? I realize we're not directly answering your question, but most of the RRO are human still. But New Earth Order, we're not holding on to the past. We no longer want to be something that did not exist truly as anything real in the first place.
Thank you, Chelsea. A question here, what's after moving? What is time travel in the year 2111?
Time is so congruent that there's no need to travel, just like we can communicate with you in your time now as if it's our time. And you may not understand us because you still believe that in a certain density where time is your biggest god, shall we say. Time is your biggest oppressor. So we don't time travel. Time is very fluid for us. We barely age.
Wow, that's cool. Thank you. What role does technology play in your time? Mel would like to know.
Not as much, we would say, as the United Nations Order, and certainly not as little as the Republican Renegade Order. But we say that we utilize it only when necessary. Our science is about energetic evolution. So this is galactic science that we've learned from our ancestors from this universe, but not from Earth. Our scientists are primarily highly evolved beings, and bringing forth all those technologies are light technologies, vibration technologies. We highly value truth. We highly value clarity. No person feels disempowered in the New Earth Order. Everyone is taught about empowerment from a very young age. But when it comes to science and our technologies, I say that it's, again, vibrational and light-based technologies only.
Thank you, Chelsea. I have a question here, and it is, what is the most relevant question we could possibly ask you now to implement a positive trajectory before 2090?
Well, I'm not in your head, so I can't tell you what question you want to ask, but we can give you information and we can state that it's important for you to know some things that could shift the trajectory of some very painful experiences. For one, do not be overly distracted by the pull, the pain, the fear implemented from your political structures, implemented from your religious structures. You need to be willing to utilize your powerful thoughts way outside of those boxes. And if you can't, that's going to cause great devastation. This is beginning to happen now, and those of you who will reside with us here in the New Earth Order, and some of you are already experiencing, these states of, I suppose your yogis would call it ananda, or pure contentment. Did you know that word, your ancient yogis meant it to mean pure contentment, and then Americans translated it to bliss? But bliss is just a pure, deep contentment, a deep nourishing. And this is something that you need to connect to in all moments and not make it such a thing that you can't grasp, or don't make it like an emotional experience, but a deeply satiating connection to the plants and the animals and the ecology of Earth. And when you can do this, your pull towards such devastating potentials will dissipate, and perhaps we can avoid a giant long war. I'm sure that Clarion has given you plenty of information about your potential for the 7-year war that lightly scared the britches off of you. But we're here to tell you that it's only a 50-50 potential, and you can shift that. You can shift that. And understand that you are energetically evolving. And this is as much scientific as it is emotional. And this is not some unusual woo-woo thing, as you would call it, where you need to go close yourself up in a tent somewhere and sit with your ancestors and sing sacred songs for, the next year, or climb a mountain and close yourself off. This is about becoming more evolved, which, if you want to become more evolved, you need to become more involved, not less involved. More evolved means more involved with your society, with your earth, with plants, with trees, with everything. This is what will prevent that war. It is still highly possible that you can prevent that war that Clarion spoke of.
Thank you for that. Just another question. Do you have governments in your time?
We do. Yes, we do. We are aware that although we do not have law, we do have language and communication. We are so highly communicative that it would be very rare. We can't say it never happens, but when unusual things happen like murder, it's typically under the guise of a deep misunderstanding that went awry. We have governmental systems that are not meant to punish, but are meant to rehabilitate a person, which is highly different from your systems. And we love just seeing a person evolve out of pain and misunderstandings. And we believe we've trained our entire race from childhood until they die to be deeply aware of telepathic communication and to be deeply aware not to misunderstand someone just because you read their mind. To be deeply aware not to misunderstand or think you know just because you read their thoughts, right? We're also, we are in control of our thoughts. Where you are currently is that your thoughts control you. So when we're thinking, we're very aware that there's no such thing as private thoughts. No such thing as hiding anything. We are deeply authentic beings because we are aware that if we hold an untruth, if you will, inside of ourselves, we begin to think about it. We begin to have emotions about it. Other people read this, and then these are when the potentials of crime or war could happen. Therefore, from a very young age, we are taught to manage our thoughts and to not let our thoughts manage us, to manage thoughts before they become fears or other lower frequency emotions that can cause unique keys and codes for destruction. We are taught that, therefore, our children do not grow up to be violent beings or to create crime, you see? But the downside of that is you're holding on to your privacy because you like lies, all of you. In this stage in time, everyone is all about their sacred privacy, and we call that hiding. There's none of that here. None of that here. It doesn't make for a peaceful society. No one gets to hide their thoughts because they're afraid.
Thank you, Chelsea. That's a pretty cool answer. How's the channel doing and how are you doing?
We're both struggling, but we really want to get the information through.
Well, we just have another couple of questions. Will we rock on and just let me know if you're having difficulty?
Well, I feel that you have more than a couple, so we'll just make sure that she takes some grand sleep after this. Yeah. Because the information does need to come through, and it's just as important to her as it is to us.
Okay. So we have another question here. Some Cheryl wants to know, have some of the species that have undergone mass extinction in our time returned in your time?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, unusual species like the platypus has made a grand return, and they're swimming around very beautifully. They can be quite nasty little buggers, and you didn't know that. You just look at some of your dinosaurs and beautiful things in the past, like the platypus, to be such beautiful things, but they can be very destructive. So we had, upon the return of certain species, we had to make sure that the same dualistic components of what did you call it? This doesn't operate in the same way in our world, in fight or flight.
Fight or flight?
No, not quite exactly that. Let me ask my scientists. Survival of the fittest, they're saying. It isn't the case. And animals don't evolve from a Darwinistic approach. The same evolutionary theory does not apply. We did not attempt to reintroduce them via our own scientific efforts. We introduced them in a way that called them from the light of our soul. Our soul is our technology, you see.
Oh, right.
And that's very scientific for us. We're not, and as Jessie makes fun of this, she says, the earth is all sitting around singing Kumbaya together. But Jessie still lights up on sacred plants quite frequently.
Okay.
So we're not sitting around having, the religious tent revivals calling in Jesus, and we're not going out and believing that all of us are indigenous either. You see, all of us are equal. Religions exist for those who believe in them, but they're not placed above anyone else. There's no discrimination in our world. Yet you can have, what's the word? Discrimination in your time meant something very painful. What we use the word discretion. So while we don't discriminate, we do have the power and sovereignty of discretion creatively to think and feel differently than you do. And we don't need to fight over it because there's no sense of right or wrong in the way that you currently know it. Does that help or make sense?
Yeah.
We have right or wrong, but it's mostly what is ethical and what isn't would be the best way to describe it. What is helpful and what isn't. We don't eat anything that would harm someone.
Okay.
You know, we don't eat animals. It's something that's not, you want to do that, that's an RRO function.
Okay.
We don't, Lemurians taught us this, that when you eat something that has to die to feed you, that is the beginning of painful dualistic structures. Yes.
Thank you for that, Chelsea. Another question. We are learning to get off the wheel of reincarnation. In your time, do we have to reincarnate to spend time on Earth, or can we come and go as we like?
I'm asking our reincarnation experts, and they're informing me that you are currently in a time where a small portion of you still believe that there is forced reincarnation.
Okay.
And there isn't. That there isn't in our time, at least.
Okay.
Right. That's not, we recognize that your beliefs are very powerful, and all of our beliefs are very powerful, including in our time. So we are, we hold grand discretion and discernment regarding where we choose to place our attention, what information or data we receive. And we're very discretionary about the light that we transmit and the beliefs that we will share with you, because we believe that it's discernment that's power, not knowledge. Everyone has knowledge in our time, but discernment and discretion are the greatest power in our time. So you flood yourselves with knowledge and then you don't know what to do with it. We already have knowledge, but we only use it at great discretion from our soul, from the unique discernment in the soul. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah. Thank you for that answer. Dora would like to know, why did the sun lose its intensity, and can it be averted?
This was just a natural byproduct of the human destruction in your time.
Okay. Another question from Dora. What is the main thing you would like to teach us about consciousness today, and what do we in our time need to understand about